Hi, I'm Blake Lively, and I'm going to be taking the BuzzFeed quiz, which iconic Blake Lively character?
The whirlwind surrounding Blake Lively's career and personal public image reached a fever pitch in August 2024, as her star power, coupled with an intense focus on the ongoing feud with Justin Baldoni, placed her under a microscope that magnified every misstep she had made over the years. Media outlets, always eager to pounce, highlighted a particularly controversial move on her part: the cross-promotion of a domestic violence film alongside her husband's summer blockbuster. Critics questioned the optics, asking why she would juxtapose a film depicting serious societal issues with commercial endorsements, including a booze brand, florals, and hair care products. The public scrutiny intensified as older controversies resurfaced, such as the interview she gave with a Northern European actress where her comments about pregnancy were widely dissected and criticized online, leaving her vulnerable to renewed backlash. Against this backdrop, the legal narrative became even more complex, as the filing from Baldoni's legal team asserted that Blake Lively had yet to identify a single instance in which the defendants disseminated false information about her. The so-called smear campaign was framed, they argued, largely as objections to Baldoni defending himself against public criticism. Whenever Justin or his representatives engaged with the press, the filing emphasized their remarks were grounded in truth, referencing actual behavior and incidents, supported by contemporaneous documentation that negated the use of bots, fake accounts, or any digital manipulation. Baldoni's team even expressed a deliberate reluctance to harm Lively's reputation, stating clearly that their goal was merely self-defense against the unfolding narrative, rather than any intent to cast her as an outcast. On the other side, the court documents painted a strikingly different picture of Blake's approach, describing a meticulously orchestrated litigation strategy through a shell company called Vanzon, allegedly designed to obtain private messages from Bellin's publicist under New York subpoena powers. This maneuver, the filing contended, led to selective excerpts being used out of context in a December 21, 2024 New York Times article, which then amplified claims that Justin Baldoni had violated boundaries and retaliated against her with a smear campaign. Baldoni's legal filing highlighted that the timeline did not support the narrative Lively sought to establish, noting that by December 2024, the grievances she had raised months earlier had already been addressed and resolved, yet she escalated the issue through an administrative complaint and a prominently featured headline, portraying conduct once deemed minor as grave sexual harassment. The contrast between her previously informal handling of concerns and the dramatic framing by her counsel painted a strategic picture of litigation aimed at reputation management rather than genuine legal grievance. Evidence included within Baldoni's filing focused heavily on on-set behavior, particularly video footage from the production of It Ends With Us, where Lively's improvisational actions, such as unscripted kisses in a hospital scene, were highlighted. These unscripted moments, although initially presented as creative flourishes, became central to the argument that her claims of harassment and misconduct were overblown. The filing described in vivid detail how she instructed her scene partner in a moment of improvisation, saying, "June, you have nothing to fear. I've done this procedure countless times. Close your eyes and everything will be fine," followed by her own unscripted additions that culminated in unexpected on-screen kisses. Baldoni's team used these examples to underscore that the incidents she now framed as harassment were, in fact, contextually appropriate within the adult-themed narrative of the film. Further, the summary judgment filing emphasized that Lively's lawsuit seemed driven by concerns over reputational damage rather than true legal wrongs, citing the handful of on-set comments she claimed as offensive. Baldoni's team defended their hiring of a crisis management firm as a standard protective measure, arguing that safeguarding reputation is a legitimate concern in any high-profile production. Accusations that his team leaked deposition material were denied, with no evidence linking them to any leaks, while requests for additional footage, such as the home birth video of Jamie Heath's wife, were framed by Lively's counsel as indicative of further grievances. Baldoni's filing methodically rebutted these claims, stating that the requested footage was mischaracterized and that the legal definition of harassment or retaliation required actionable adverse employment actions, none of which had occurred. The documents detailed how Blake Lively's influence on set grew substantially over time, with her exercising authority over filming schedules, locations, costumes, and intimate scene direction, often negotiating modifications to accommodate family commitments and personal preferences. Her LLC, acting as an independent contractor, managed her compensation, benefits, and staffing, further establishing a position of power rather than vulnerability. Baldoni's legal team painted a picture of a highly autonomous actor whose demands were routinely accommodated, arguing that these conditions could not be construed as harassment or retaliation. The filing also emphasized that any post-production negative publicity Lively experienced stemmed from the public resurfacing of independently verifiable content and social media discussions, none orchestrated or falsified by the defendants. Her professional team, Baldoni's counsel insisted, had established HR channels, complaint procedures, and policies, all of which were either followed or specifically tailored to meet Lively's requests. The summary judgment argued that her claims of aiding and abetting, failure to investigate, or retaliation were unsupported by the evidence and legally unsustainable. Moreover, the documents underscored that her status as an independent contractor afforded her extensive control over her work and conditions on set, from creative decisions to logistical oversight, including the relocation of production from Boston to New Jersey at her request. Payment structures further reinforced this autonomy, with her LLC receiving guaranteed compensation plus back-end profits, managing personnel, and determining schedules without employer constraints. The filing concluded by reiterating that the alleged conduct cited by Lively was isolated, benign, or addressed promptly, lacking the severity or pervasiveness required to establish a claim under applicable sexual harassment laws. The context of adult-themed film production, equal treatment of male and female cast members, and the absence of gender-based motivations were highlighted to undermine claims of harassment. In sum, Baldoni's legal strategy framed Lively's claims as reputationally motivated and unsubstantiated by the factual record, advocating for a ruling in favor of summary judgment to end the litigation without trial. The filing emphasized that she neither suffered adverse employment actions nor had any legal grounds to assert retaliation, given her enhanced control, authority, and contractual benefits as an independent contractor. Every aspect of the production, from scene direction to personnel selection, was under her purview, which Baldoni's counsel argued fundamentally contradicted the narrative of vulnerability or mistreatment central to Lively's allegations. This comprehensive documentation, including video evidence, production records, and contemporaneous communications, was presented to establish an unambiguous factual basis for summary judgment. Now, the story will continue to unravel, detailing the legal maneuvers, media narratives, and additional on-set incidents that shaped the high-stakes battle between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, highlighting the intense intersection of celebrity power, creative control, and courtroom strategy. As the legal battle escalated, the courtroom and media sphere became increasingly entangled, each new filing from Baldoni's team strategically undermining Blake Lively's claims while framing her actions as part of a calculated campaign to protect her public image rather than address any genuine workplace grievance. The filing meticulously recounted incidents on the set of It Ends With Us, emphasizing that while Lively had at times expressed concerns, production leadership consistently responded promptly, incorporating requested adjustments, protections, and procedural accommodations. Baldoni's team highlighted that any isolated incidents occurred in the context of a production with mature thematic content, where discussions of sexuality and intimate scenes were intrinsic to the film and applied to all actors equally, not directed at Lively due to her gender. They argued that her portrayal of discomfort or harassment failed to meet the threshold of objective severity or pervasiveness required for legal action, reinforcing that her claims were grounded in perception and reputation management rather than substantiated wrongdoing. The court documents drew attention to the video footage from filming, showcasing how Lively's improvisational tendencies, such as the addition of unexpected kisses during hospital scenes, conflicted with her current narrative of on-set harassment. These moments, intended initially to enhance the scene's authenticity and dramatic impact, now paradoxically served as evidence that she exercised control and initiative on set, contradicting assertions of vulnerability. Baldoni's counsel stressed that the footage demonstrated her active creative participation, her ability to dictate intimate scene execution, and her authority over both cast and minor production decisions, all undermining any suggestion of coercion or adverse treatment. Furthermore, the filing elaborated on Lively's administrative maneuvers, particularly the formation of the shell company Vanzin, illustrating a deliberate effort to access private communications from Bellin's team. Baldoni's attorneys contended that these tactics were less about legal necessity and more about obtaining material for media dissemination, as evidenced by selective excerpts used in the New York Times article in December 2024, framing Baldoni as retaliatory. The timeline presented in the filing indicated that the initial grievances had been addressed months earlier, yet Lively escalated the dispute with a high-profile complaint, demonstrating intent to influence public perception rather than pursue a bona fide workplace resolution. Baldoni's filing also dissected Lively's broader pattern of media engagement, pointing to her prior controversies, endorsement campaigns, and cross-promotions as evidence that she understood and navigated public attention with sophistication, further calling into question her narrative of being a passive or exploited figure. Legal arguments underscored her status as an independent contractor with exceptional autonomy. She controlled scheduling, creative decisions, filming locations, and personnel, often demanding and receiving accommodations that extended beyond standard production practices. Payment arrangements through her LLC, including guaranteed minimums and profit participation, reinforced this independence, as did her ability to negotiate conditions surrounding intimate scenes, costumes, and shooting parameters. Baldoni's team emphasized that the law recognizes such autonomy, and thus her claims of harassment or retaliation were incompatible with her established contractual and operational control. The filing additionally addressed allegations of retaliation tied to media coverage, highlighting that any negative publicity she encountered post-production stemmed from independent sources or resurfacing of prior statements and conduct, not orchestrated or manipulated by Baldoni or his representatives. Requests for further footage or content, including the disputed home birth material, were framed as attempts to create new claims rather than genuine concerns about workplace conduct. The legal documentation carefully distinguished between discomfort arising from professional interaction versus legally actionable harassment, reiterating that no employment-related changes occurred, no demotion, sidelining, or loss of influence. In fact, her influence on set had grown, and all production leadership accommodated her requests. Baldoni's filing further detailed the context of each cited incident, asserting that Lively's examples were isolated, promptly addressed, and bound by the film's adult thematic framework, negating any notion of pervasive misconduct. The filing scrutinized claims of aiding and abetting, noting that individuals such as Melissa Nathan and Jen Ael had no involvement in any actionable misconduct, and that their engagement with publicity and PR was consistent with protecting reputation, not harassment. Baldoni's legal team also illustrated that Lively's post-production assertions reframed ordinary professional and creative disagreements as retaliation, an interpretation unsupported by any factual record. They highlighted that she had negotiated her own working conditions extensively, moved production locations at will, determined shooting schedules, and managed staffing arrangements, all signs of substantial autonomy inconsistent with claims of oppression or vulnerability. Even matters of compensation, including LLC-based payment and back-end profit sharing, further emphasized her independent status, eliminating the possibility of employer-style liability. The motion for summary judgment painstakingly connected these points, arguing that no reasonable juror could conclude she experienced actionable retaliation, harassment, or adverse employment action. Each example Lively raised was presented with contextual counter-evidence demonstrating prompt accommodation, equal treatment among cast members, and absence of gender-based motivation, effectively dismantling her legal claims. Baldoni's counsel stressed that her star status and specialized skills gave her leverage unmatched by other cast members, allowing her to negotiate protections, scene control, and operational authority that went far beyond standard professional arrangements. In essence, the filing positioned Lively as a powerful, autonomous actor whose legal grievances were largely reactive, aimed at influencing reputation rather than addressing tangible workplace harm. The narrative underscored the sophisticated intersection of celebrity culture, media scrutiny, and contractual independence, illustrating the complex dynamics that govern high-profile productions. In addition to legal arguments, the filing incorporated detailed chronological evidence of communications, production notes, and third-party observations to reinforce its case. This included contemporaneous documentation of on-set behavior, scheduling adjustments, costume decisions, and improvisational scene changes, all demonstrating her ability to influence production and decision-making without constraint. Baldoni's team also contextualized media coverage, arguing that resurfacing controversies or online commentary cannot constitute legal retaliation, highlighting that social scrutiny is independent of any defendant's actions. The filing concluded by asserting that the combination of autonomous control, independent contractor status, and immediate responsiveness by production leadership to any raised concerns created a scenario where no legal basis for harassment or retaliation existed. By methodically addressing each of Lively's claims, contrasting them with contemporaneous evidence, and emphasizing her operational power, Baldoni's summary judgment sought a definitive conclusion. The case should be dismissed without trial. The narrative framed in the filing painted a portrait of a meticulously executed defense strategy, grounded in factual clarity, legal precedent, and meticulous attention to timelines, contractual nuances, and media impact. At its core, the documents presented a high-stakes struggle between celebrity reputation, independent creative authority, and legal accountability, highlighting the delicate balance of autonomy, public perception, and contractual governance in Hollywood productions. By dismantling each claim with supporting evidence, the filing portrayed Lively's allegations as strategically overstated, reinforcing the argument for summary judgment. Every detail, from improvisational scene direction to negotiation of production logistics, was presented as proof of her professional empowerment, in direct opposition to her narrative of workplace harassment. Furthermore, the strategic deployment of video evidence, communications logs, and administrative timelines emphasized that the legal proceedings were not merely about interpersonal disputes but centered on reputational stakes, control over narrative, and interpretation of contractual authority. Baldoni's team underscored that while media outlets and public discourse might sensationalize events, the legal framework requires concrete evidence of adverse employment action or pervasive misconduct, criteria Lively could not meet. The filing concluded with a decisive call for judicial intervention to end the matter swiftly, citing overwhelming documentation, logical consistency, and legal precedent, all demonstrating the absence of actionable claims. In doing so, the narrative illuminated a broader theme. In Hollywood, power, autonomy, and media perception converge in ways that complicate simple narratives of victimhood or wrongdoing, underscoring the intricate dance between celebrity status, creative authority, and courtroom strategy. Ultimately, the comprehensive filings portrayed a meticulously orchestrated defense, highlighting the realities of high-profile film production, the limits of legal claims in a context of professional autonomy, and the stark contrast between public perception and evidentiary reality. Blake Lively's influence, independence, and ability to shape both creative and operational aspects of her work were consistently emphasized, creating a compelling argument for dismissal. By intertwining production evidence, contractual documentation, and media analysis, the filing sought to definitively resolve the dispute in Baldoni's favor, while simultaneously offering a window into the complex mechanics of celebrity legal battles where power, autonomy, and public narrative collide in a high-stakes, meticulously documented drama. While public discourse may continue to speculate, the legal record, as meticulously laid out by Baldoni's team, presents an overwhelming case for summary judgment, emphasizing that Lively's claims, when examined against concrete evidence, independent contractor status, and contextual professional behavior, fall dramatically short of the legal standards required for a trial to proceed.